Hi, welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm David Matlin, coming to you live from Israel with the headline stories from across the region. Here are the latest. We began looking at U.S. President Trump. He wants to see a so-called unified response from Iran's leadership to his proposals to end the war. It's according to the latest from the White House. And in line with that position, President Trump has extended the ceasefire, at least temporarily, without a set deadline, as the U.S. position remains most focused on the Iranian nuclear programs. Now, for now, the apparent deadline is Sunday, with a large degree of uncertainty, of course, especially here in Israel, over just whether the war will resume in full force then or not. Now, the leading position among Israeli officials seems to be skepticism that a deal can be reached at this moment in any form, with the two sides still far apart on the core issues. But meanwhile, the United States is maintaining its naval blockade on Iran, while Tehran has continued detaining several vessels in the Strait of Hormuz and even opening fire on ships in the area. All of this going on just in the last hours. Now, we have a lot to talk about today, and we have a panel joining us. First is IDF Reserve Colonel Itamar Yaar. He's a former deputy head of Israel's National Security Council, and Erfan Fard. He's a counterterrorism analyst and researcher specializing in Iranian security and intelligence affairs. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. So thank you both for being with us. Itamar, I'll throw the first question at you. There's a lot of conflicting reports, statements pertaining to the status of the Strait of Hormuz and whatever's happening with the shipping. Look, both sides seem to be interfering with the other, at least. What's your take on Operation Economic Fury, the blockade pressure campaigns by the U.S. and Iran? Is this a situation that can be maintained by both sides for, say, weeks to come still?
There are plenty of questions and all kind of signs about what is happening in the region. And I will start with the question, who is taking really the decisions within Iran? What we see is a fundamental differences between the president and the foreign minister in one side, and what is happening on the ground. In other words, what the Islamic Republic military is doing on the ground. And I think that part of the problem is that the president and the foreign minister, let's call them the civilians, would like to reach some kind of agreement because they understand what does it mean that Iran lose hundreds of millions of, or more than it, every day when the Iranian ports are closed. And they understand that in a short time, the civilians in Iran will not have what to eat and how to get salaries. And they understand what will happen next. The Revolutionary Guards are less concerned about that, and they think that they can use force. Who will win? It's a big question, and I think that in one hand we have the president of the U.S. And nobody, and I really mean nobody, know what he have in mind. And in the other hand, we see the Iranian system that I just described. Can it be some kind of a sustained situation, stable situation? My answer is no. How long will it take? I can't say. It can take days. It can take a bit more. I'm not so sure that the American president is happy to go into back to fight. But we can't guess what will be his next step, because I think that all of us don't think that what he says is exactly what he have in mind.
Erfan, I want to bring this to you in terms of, we cite the economic cost. We see this reported a lot, that say $400 to $500 million a day being lost by the Iranian side from this U.S. blockade. Look, we also heard that 90% of their missiles and launchers were destroyed and their entire Navy was gone. We don't feel the effects of that, and many of the estimates now say that maybe they still have as much as 50% of their missile arsenal still there. And we're seeing these smaller, naval vessels of the IRGC really disrupting traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. That economic number, even if it is right and correct, is it having the effect that we're led to believe it is here?
First of all, I believe the core issue in all the negotiations is the political will of the Iranians. And repeatedly, they expressed in the nationwide protest and demanding the regime change. And unfortunately, this demand is not mentioned in the negotiations at all. The Iranian people, they didn't say change, for example, the theocracy to junta. The Iranian people, they don't want to change the faces from Khamenei to Ahmad Vahidi, the famous notorious terrorist in the world. So right now, this is the core issue that we should consider from the Iranian angle. And another one, which is very important right now, is the internal crisis in Iran, that I totally agree with our friend that he mentioned all this issue. Internally, Iran is unstable politically and economically. And socially, the people, they try to do something. Why? Because the brutal, savage system of the regime, they want to kill the people on and on. For example, in the January 2026, they slaughtered 45,000 patriotic, innocent people in Iran. Why? Because they wanted to survive. And continuously, in this moment, they try to start different engines to suppress the people. So the third one is the power struggle. The power struggle is now between the classic mullahs system and the junta or military figures, because they wanted to survive. And I personally believe that right now the United States focus politically is on the base of negotiations, which is the reality. But fundamentally, Israel and United States, they should finish the job. Otherwise, this regime will be the headache for the future. The collapse of the economy and military of Iran cannot be the main goal. Regime change will be the main goal. Otherwise, Israel and the United States, they will pay the consequences on for the future.
Definitely going to circle back on that concept here as we discuss. But Itamar, I want to get your thoughts on, look, Iran's increasingly hardline demands over the last 2 weeks of ceasefire. I mean, that the Hormuz is theirs, that nuclear enrichment is non-negotiable, that the United States must pay reparations for damage. The sides appear to be moving farther apart by the day. So here in Israel, I think everyone's asking each other, when will the war resume? And, what will it look like in the next round?
First of all, I think that some of the Iranian demands are some kind of demands that even those that mention them understand that they will not reach them. But they would like to have many demands to make sure that they will be able to give up on some of them. The question is on where is what we used to call the red line. Will they will give up the whole issue of controlling Hormuz? Or they will give up dealing with the nuclear materials. There is few issues that it's clear that they will not give up. The missiles, and I don't think that Americans will have it as real demands. I think that for the Americans, what is important is the Horn of Hormuz, of course, and some kind of agreement dealing with the nuclear materials. But let's be frank. Israel and the US are not able to bring a regime change. They can push, they can try to encourage the Iranian public, but either the Americans and the Israelis together are not able to reach that by themselves. The issue of Hormuz is something that some kind of agreement can be achieved, but how exactly it will be achieved, nobody knows. And again, we are going back to the question, what will come next? Will we reach an agreement first, or will we see some kind of escalation, a military escalation, that only then the two sides will come to the table and will reach some kind of agreement? And again, when on the American side, we know who is the real player. On the Iranian side, we don't know who really will succeed to take control and to be able to reach an agreement with the Americans. And then there is another question. Let's say, hypothetically, they will reach an agreement. Who will enforce this agreement on the other side of Iran?
Right,
Nobody can know.
Erfan, I think coming out of that answer and talking about regime change, and you touch on this as well. Look, there's this critical but hard, if not impossible, aspect to measure. Just what the Iranians are asking themselves in this moment, sort of what's happening, let's say, in the Iranian bazaar society after this unprecedented assault on the regime. Now, with this economic pressure, what do we know about what the people inside of Iran are saying and thinking at this point?
Personally, I have one personal view. That personal view is, okay, the Iranian regime is one side and the Iranian people is in another side. And there is a gap between the society and the brutal regime. And 19 times since 1979, the Iranian people, they did protest against this regime, this theocratic regime. And this is undeniable. So what they want, they don't like theocracy, they like freedom. But this is 2 months that the Iranian regime, they shut down the internet. Why? Because they don't want to show the people that they are worse than Stalin or Hitler, and they slaughter the people. This is very easy. And the propaganda machine of the regime continuously, abroad or internally, they are working just to wash the face of the regime, which is impossible. But another point, which is very important, that our friend mentioned, that historically, the mindset of the regime is they don't want to repeat the treaties of Gulistan and Turkmenchai when Iran and Russia, they had a problem with each other 200 years ago. And so Iranian regime right now, they don't want to surrender. Why? Because they wanted to say that this regime is celebrating the victory. But victory of what? Defeating of Israel in the United States, which is not real. So for the reason the
is the public buying it? Are they buying that argument? The IRGC leadership making that case that they won or that they're winning? Are people believing it?
The Iranian people, they don't believe it. They don't trust it because they know that these guys, they are manipulating all the world. And for example, right now, if you pay attention to all the Persian medias internally in Iran and their stooges and apologists outside Iran, they announcing the victory, that we defeated Israel and we defeated the United States of America. This is a problem right now with the mullahs regime. For the reason I told you, there is a gap internally between the Iranian people and the regime. And so this regime, I agree that they cannot managing with this crisis, because this crisis actually humiliation of the leadership, that right now Mustafa Khamenei, nobody knows is alive or not. Can he demanding something or not? Can he make a decision or not? So the IRGC totally, they use this figure on the board and paper just to tell the people that we have the leader. But in the reality, the Iranian people, they know that this guy is only a paper tiger and he is nobody, and the people, they know there is no legitimacy for somebody like the Mustafa Khamenei. And so there is the power struggle right now between the figures in the IRGC, because they like to have the power and show that we are the main making decision, which is not real at all.
Itamar, the realities, there's this other really central aspect. We've talked about the issues in the Straits of Hormuz. We've talked about the treatment of people inside Iran, but there's this nuclear program and this highly enriched uranium, along with a lot of other enriched uranium, not as highly enriched, but just as dangerous. What can you say about the realities for the U.S., for the world, really, of getting all of that enriched uranium out and preventing the regime from buying or enriching more? How far-fetched is that concept?
Look, I think that the nuclear materials are important, and it's important to take it out of Iran.
Yeah.
Having said that, it's not the most important part. Why? Because it's only a matter of time. Because the Iranians will be able to enrich other materials. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
So the main issue is the willingness of the Iranian regime to reach nuclear capability. I'm afraid to say that after what had happened in the last month and even more than it, the motivation of the current Iranian regime is much higher than it used to be in the past. If in the past most experts believe that Iran don't have an interest to reach really a nuclear capability, but they have an interest to be as close as possible to that and to send the message, it's our decision if to reach the gap or not. Now they will be determined to show, as the North Korea have done, that they have it. Not that they are close to it, they have it. So we are going back to the basic question that my colleague mentioned more than once.
Yeah.
Is the Iranian regime, the current one, will survive or not? I said already that the US and Israel are not able to get rid of this regime now. But I believe that what is happening now in Iran, the division within the Iranian regime, the division between the regime and most of the public, because, we speak about a nation of 100 million or close to 100 million people. I am not so sure that it's even realistic to speak about the real Iranian people, because there are differences between the Iranian people that live in Tehran and in some other big countries and people that live in the other areas along the borders and so on. But I believe that the process, the process that weakened the Iranian current regime is something that will see the real results only in a matter of time. And I speak about months, perhaps even years. Yeah. And if this is what is happening now, it's some kind of optimistic view, because those that expected that we will see a collapse, an immediate collapse of the regime, are not realistic. They were not realistic in the past, they are not realistic now. Is it on the way? I believe that the answer is yes. How long will it take? How high will be the price that all of us will pay, including, or first of all, the Iranian people? Nobody can say.
Well, Erfan, on that question of price for the Iranian people, I mean, it is a nation of, I think, about 93 million people or so, like Itamar says. What do you think the effect is on the Iranian public, seeing right now that the preservation of a Lebanese terrorist organization, Hezbollah, has been one of the top priorities for this regime in talks with the U.S.? I mean, in other words, our colony in Lebanon, our front against Israel, has it only further laid bare just where the priorities of this regime are?
Actually, the priority of this regime is Islamic terrorism. The priority of this regime is killing and slaughtering their own people. And the priority of this regime is the survival of the Islamic Caliphate of the Shia mullahs in Iran. And this is no doubt about this. But the escalation of the crisis is their main goal. They like to show the world that we can use the terrorist groups in the Shia crescent against Israel as much as we can. And this is a dream. But this dream right now actually is a strategic dilemma for Israel and United States, how they wanted to solve it. Because the coexistential peacefully with this regime is impossible. For example, I ask someone to live with cancer tumor for 10 years. This is impossible. They need surgery. For the reason right now, Iranian people, they are alone and they should do this surgery. Otherwise, this regime brutally, they will escalate the tension in the Middle East for many years ahead.
If I may say something about Lebanon and the connection between the Lebanese issue and the main Iranian issue. Mm-hmm. I believe that what Israel must do now with the US and together with some other partners, including the French, is to try to help the Lebanese government and their struggle against Hezbollah. I think we have an opportunity now, not because the Hezbollah had changed their views, not because Iran is less determined to help the Hezbollah, but because Iran is much weaker now to help the Hezbollah. And the Hezbollah is weaker than it used to be. Yes, the Hezbollah is stronger than some people try to sell us, but the Hezbollah is weak. And this is the best time to help the Lebanese government to fight Hezbollah by force and by some kind of diplomatic measures, including within Lebanon. We didn't speak about the Lebanese people. The Lebanese people now,
Our
most
ties
of
to
them,
the Druze, the Sunni, the Christian up there,
including the
is
Shias,
strong. Yeah.
many of them are sick and tired of what Hezbollah had brought Lebanon. Bear in mind, most of those people that had to leave their houses and see now that they have no places to come back to, even if Israel will go out of Lebanon, most of them are Shia. Now, does it mean that all of them will join the Zionist movement? Of course not. But some of them, at least, will say to themselves, we paid a high price. And their motivation to help the Hezbollah now is lower. We see it even on the ground, when for the first time we see Shia people on the ground that cooperate with the government and cooperate even with the Israeli forces. Now, of course, it's not a movement. It's only a very small scales. But I think that we need to see the opportunity. And I believe that once the Iranian will lose their arm in Lebanon, it will help also the Iranian people to change the situation within Iran.
Erfan, another question to you, and I would have framed this as the tough question, but I think you've more or less answered it already. But look, Iran's revolutionary regime and Hezbollah, they have eschatological, apocalyptic, views of this struggle, that it's, in other words, worth dying and sacrificing their entire countries of Lebanon, Iran, seemingly everywhere, on the altar of destroying Israel and eventually America. How can there ever be a negotiated outcome given that fact? And any negotiated outcome, does that necessarily, kick this conflict down the road?
Personally, I disagree any diplomacy with terrorists, because with terrorists, you cannot do diplomacy. Diplomacy with who? They like to kill the people. They like to explode the bombs. They like to make the nuclear bombs. And so diplomacy here is just actually the fantasy. I don't have fantasy, and I am a very realistic guy. For the reason I believe we have Hashd al-Sha'bi, we have Hezbollah, we have Hamas, and we have Fatimiyun, Zainabiyun. So 12 different Islamic terrorist groups, they are working with the Iranian regime. So elimination of them can be a sign of peace in the future. But with diplomacy, they cannot accept diplomacy because they like crisis, and their existence is based on the crisis. So personally, I believe right now the Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq under the leadership of Ali Sistani is another headache for Israel and Houthis as well. For the reason right now, I believe the Iranian regime, they use these cards, the proxy warfare against the United States and Israel. And so the new director of the Mossad and the IDF in Israel, they will have a new strategy as well. And so the United States, personally, I believe they should find a solution for this dilemma. Otherwise, President Trump cannot solve it very rationally in the future.
Hey, Itamar, we'll get this last one to you. I mean, with the Houthi issue, there's a Saudi coalition. There are Yemeni tribes, gathered in other parts of the country, potentially to deal with that. On the Hezbollah side, look, we've seen Syrian President al-Shara on a top-tier trip through the Gulf this week. Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, beyond. What's happening there? Is this a potential partner for Israel in terms of going after Hezbollah in southern Lebanon?
Look, I think that the situation in the entire Middle East had changed. It changed dramatically. Not because, again, as I said earlier, that the different players decided that the Zionist movement is the name of the game and they would like to join it. But reality is also an option. And I fully agree with my colleague that the religious element make all that very difficult. But what we see is that the religious element within the Sunni countries, and I don't speak about Iraq in this case, Iraq mostly is Shia, but I speak about all the other players that you mentioned, including Syria. They would like to have, I would say, stability, some of them for a limited period of time, like Syria, and some of them for good. Now, let's see, why the Iranians attacked the Emirates more than any other countries, and they attack the Emirates twice the numbers that they attack Israel. because the Emirates represent everything is the opposite of Iran, religiously, culturally, economically, and so on. And again, we need to motivate those that understand that their interest, not the Israeli interest, but their interest to join
massively
Israel
overlooked side here, the Gulf countries as well.
And you know,
Itamar, sorry to cut in on you.
I just listened to yesterday to the Emirates ambassador in the US. You know, when you listen to her, you think that she is
in a serious
Israeli.
position. Sorry to cut you. We are on live time here. Itamar, I appreciate you being with us. Erfan, we can speak about this much more, and I know in the coming days there will be more to talk about. Thanks for joining us, guys. That brings us to the end of this live edition of ILTV on the Hour, coming to you live from Israel, where you can catch up on all of the latest around our main stories. I'm David Matlin. Thanks for joining.